So, Leander, you and the Olympics has got a massive umbilical cord. I mean, you're from a pedigree family, Olympians. Even your origin story is linked to the Olympics, right? So, do you think it's a kind of karmic link between you and the Olympics? 7 Olympics, to be precise.
Well, an umbilical cord is about right because during the 1972 Olympics, when Palestinian terrorists were taking Israeli athletes hostage, and the 10,000 athletes were all positioned in the village by alphabetical order, the Indian building was right next to the Israel building. And the German army were in, they removed all the televisions, they removed all the newspapers, and I guess my parents had nothing else better to do because I was conceived at that Olympics. So it's quite an interesting thing because coming from India, a country that is so rich in heritage, I feel like it's very important to recognize the legacy that one's born into. And I think that, especially coming from a state like West Bengal, where we're so rich in heritage and culture and history in every department of life, I was born into a legacy. So at one side, there was tremendous pressure, but on the other side, the environment at home was so supportive and so wonderfully laid out to get me to understand by the age of 6 or 7, I already knew the legacy I was born into and what I was on this planet for. What my purpose in life was about was written very early to me by my parents.
Leander, people say, sportsmen thrive on adrenaline, and then they also say they thrive on the fact that they play for the country, they represent the country. But from whatever I've seen, you took it to a different level, in terms of playing for the country. I've seen him play in Bangalore where if the energy levels drop, again, post-lunch session, it's probably a dead rubber, and Leander will just walk out, he'll hold a tricolor, he'll gee up the crowd. Much before, Virat does this, cupping his fingers to the ears and geeing up the audience. I've seen him do that, kind of hypnotize the entire audience and get them into the zone, of being Indian and playing for India and the pride. How did that seep into you? Because that's part of your story.
As about a 6, 7, 8-year-old, I was already ironing my parents' jerseys. So my mom's jersey number for India was light blue with navy blue collars and sleeves, and it was number 5. And Baba's playing jersey was navy blue with light blue collars and light blue sleeves. And his playing number was number 10. Because when Baba played for Mohun Bagan, his jersey number was number 10 also. Okay. So whether it was the maroon and green with the buttons down the middle, or whether it was playing for India, number 10 was his number. So I used to iron their jerseys, and my purpose of ironing their jerseys was to actually see what passion they had when they played for our people. Yeah. I think one of the great things that happened to me was that I was born in Calcutta, that I was brought up in Calcutta. Today we sit here in front of some of the greatest athletes we have in our country. Sir Jaideep Mukherjee is right here. Very, very close to his family and so much respect for him because of the legacy that he has created. Yeah. I was lucky I had heroes to look up to. I had Naresh Kumar, I had Jaideep Mukherjee, I had Chuni Goswami. We had, to name some great athletes here. Yeah. You had Premjit Lal. In tennis, especially at South Club, when you just walk in there and Jaideep Sir's father was someone that I have tremendous respect for. Because he always used to give me 1 or 2 tips every day about either keeping my head still or about, my serve and my toss in the same position. And growing up in Calcutta, also playing in the Maidan, where Baba used to play at Mohun Bagan for so many years. I was just narrating a story that happened. I was about 8 years old, and Mohun Bagan was playing against another team, and a bit of a skirmish happened on the mat, on the field. And Dad, being a doctor as well, he went to treat the patient. But when that skirmish happened, all the fans from the stadium just came down onto the field. And there was a Shombuda and a Lakhanda who used to look after the Mohun Bagan locker room, the tent. They realized that this little 7, 8-year-old kid was in that stadium. So they came running out to find me, and they found me hiding underneath the stands. And they caught me, and they put me on a mounted police's back, and they rode me all the way back to Park Circus. The city of joy, the people in Calcutta have a heart. We are very deep in culture and community. And I think that sport, just like music and the arts and literacy, unite us. Sports unite us. And today is very unique because you had on the stage earlier, I don't know how many Olympics all of us have played between Uncle Gurbaks and Dad and myself. But you had Sauravda also on the stage, and the years of history that was on that stage itself was phenomenal. And to come back to the thought of how lucky one was to be born and brought up in Kolkata, whether it's the Maidan and the Mohan Bagan Club and the East Bengal Club and playing in that beautiful Maidan that we have in the middle of the city. How many young kids have the opportunity to be members of clubs? It's expensive. Yeah. How many young kids have an opportunity to go and play in a stadium? You don't get permission to go in. But to have a Shivaji Park in Bombay, or to have a Maidan here in Kolkata, I think that is a huge blessing right in the heart of the city. Also, for me in particular, I grew up at the clubs in Calcutta. Yeah. The Calcutta Cricket and Football Club was home for me. DI was home, Saturday Club, Tollygunj Club, played all our sport. Yeah. And even the members and at the club, I mean, today we've got one of the best presidents that CCNFC have had, and Uncle Dipankar Nandi, and fondly known as Paolo Rossi because of his foot skills playing football. And the opportunity that they gave me as a young boy to play football in the club. I was 7, 8, 9 years old. Ayon asked me a little earlier, he said, did you ever play rugby at CCNFC? And I did, thanks to gentlemen like Uncle Dipankar and Dad's fellow club members. They all encourage sport with the youth. And Calcutta is a city that encourages sport in the youth, thanks to wonderful men like this. And I think that is our strength. And for me, now that I'm finished up a 31-year career, I think it's really important for stalwarts like us or people like us who have played for so many years to come back and work at the grassroots levels to make a difference.
So when did the penny drop in terms of tennis for you? Because you grew up in Calcutta, you could have picked up football, right? Even Saurav could have picked up football, but he picked cricket, you picked tennis. So, and then you become this linking thread between the Amritraj and the Krishnans and the Sania Mirzas and the current generation of tennis players. So how did that journey happen?
That was a really tough choice. I used to sleep with my football. I used to polish my own boots. No one could touch them. I remember all my fun times as a young kid was playing football at the CCNFC club, or going up into the tea gardens to play football with the club, or to play for Junior India in football, to go out there and, I guess, when you have Bengali roots from your mom's side, and you have Goan Portuguese roots from your dad's side, I guess it's football, football, and more football. So I also feel that I'm more talented at football than I am at tennis.
Sure.
I feel so. Okay. You can ask Jaideep uncle that, because he still looks at my backhand and shakes his head. But really, it was a tough choice because I felt that in the 80s, when I grew up, right, in 1984, 1985, India was not doing so great in football. Yeah. You had two of the greatest sporting clubs in the country, East Bengal and Mohan Bagan. Yeah. And the rivalry between Mohan Bagan and East Bengal in any sport was fantastic. But when they played in football, like even today, you can watch ISL and it's lovely, but when Mohan Bagan and East Bengal play in ISL, my God, the whole country is watching. The stadium's packed. And that speaks of the legacy that we have here in Calcutta, and that's what I grew up with. But I remember Dad sitting me down once, and he said to me that if you're going to do football, you're not going to get to the Olympics. If you're going to do football, you're not going to get to play in the World Cup. Because India wasn't that good in the 80s in football. to make it to the World Cup or the Olympics. And then he said, what sport will you play, if not football? And it just so happened that we were sitting in the dining room, and I looked to my right, and in the living room, there was my uncle Ghani Nis's picture, where he was wearing a Fred Perry shirt, sweater rather, and 2 tennis rackets. So I said, tennis.
Okay.
And Dad laughed at me for about 6 minutes. He said, you don't even know how to play tennis. So I said to Dad, find me the best tennis academy, and we'll get you into tennis. So it was actually Sir Jaideep's brother, Uncle Chirudeep Mukherjee, who bought me my first tennis racket. I remember he was going to Bangkok and Hong Kong, if I'm not mistaken. And he bought me a tennis racket, Donne tennis racket, and came back. Because, like Saurav said earlier, the thing that Sauravda and myself recognize with is that back in the 80s, you didn't have fancy equipment and modern day shoes like Nike and Adidas and Puma. You didn't have the Prince and the Wilsons and the Babolat rackets that these great players are playing with now. I got my first tennis racket from GK Sports on Kidd Street. It's still there. And I got a Simon's racket which had rough and smooth on either side. Okay. It was a wooden tennis racket with high sheep gut. And God forbid if the gut broke, you had to wait 3 days to get your racket restrung. And I had 1 tennis racket. Whereas in football, I had 3 pairs of boots. Okay. One for hard ground that we have in the Maidan, one for monsoon, which is longer studs. And I felt that Dad made a lot of sense, that if you want to emulate, what he had done and want to continue the legend of what my parents had done, then I had to pick a sport that India was going to give the opportunity at. Okay. So I made a tough choice. I went to a sport that I was not the tallest, I was not the most technical, and people don't believe me when I say I'm not that talented at tennis, but the average height of a tennis player in the 80s was 6'1". The average height of a tennis player in the 90s was 6'2". The average height of a tennis player today is 6'3". I'm 5'10" on a good day.
But then that didn't stop you from being a giant killer in Davis Cup. So how did that switch happen? So when you're playing Davis Cup, forget the Grand Slams or whatever, but when you're playing Davis Cup, you could just get through the opposition, much more fancied players, who are ranked well above you. How did you get that switch going? Wherein you hear the word India and then you just get going.
That's always been a really tough question to answer because as a kid, sure, we had Doordarshan TV and we used to watch black and white French Open matches between Ivan Lendl and, actually we used to watch John McEnroe and Jimmy Connors or John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg then. And then you'd watch Wimbledon and you'd watch Navratilova and Chris Evert. But it was all black and white TV. And I actually remember the first time I got to Roland Garros and the first time I got to Wimbledon, I was like, wow, these colors are amazing. The green and purple at Wimbledon was like, wow, these are really cool, and all the flowers. And you get to see the red clay of Roland Garros, and the clay at Roland Garros is nothing like the clay at South Club. It's very different. Okay. Here in the clay at South Club, we have bajri, the graveled clay. Whereas at Roland Garros, it was powdered clay. Yeah. Completely different movement, style of play, different speed. But I felt that, again, the conversations at breakfast and the conversations at dinner were all about playing for the community. It was all about playing for the flag. It was all about playing for your country, for your people. Maybe winning Wimbledon was not that big for me as a kid.
But you won the junior Wimbledon, right?
1990.
Yeah.
But in 85, when I was getting into tennis and switching from football to tennis, winning the French Open was, I didn't even think I could win the French Open because I was not that good on clay. I didn't know how to move on clay. I didn't have the patience to hit ground strokes. Okay. But I felt that when it came to winning in the Olympics, I always felt I would.
And the Davis Cup.
When I played in the Davis Cup. Yeah. When I play for the Tiranga, when I play for 1.3, now 1.4 billion people, nothing stops me. That inspired me. Playing for you inspired me more than playing for myself. And that was very interesting for me because I never really understood that.
Yeah. So when you talk about Leander, there are two things that crop up. One is the way he played for India. I mean, Leander was India, India was Leander. And the other stereotype is you and Mahesh Bhupati, right? The up-down thing. What I remember the two of you is, besides the incredible tennis you guys played together, and the split, and the patch-up, and then the series and all that, was a soft drink ad you guys did together. I think in 97, 98. Yep, 7-Up, right? I think we have this new word in English called swag, which is obviously a short form for swagger. I don't know how many of you can go to YouTube, Google it up, and it's insane swag. A couple of my batchmates in Asian College of Journalism in Bangalore, the girls, they had a massive crush on both of you. You know, it had nothing to do with tennis, or the quality of tennis you guys played. It was about the way you and Hish grew together in the ad. Could you say something about that ad? I mean, it was early days for commerce in tennis and brand endorsement, which is not, I mean, unlike what it is now. But what was those days like?
You know, I think at that point in the 90s, tennis was becoming more commercialized. You know, and I think that when you look at Uncle Jaideep, you look at Premjit Lal, you look at Naresh Kumar, you look at even Zishan Ali, Vijay Anand, they did such an incredible job to pave the path for us. But really, there was no real corporate sponsorship, no real governmental support, no real association support for them to conduct a professional career. Yes, when they went to play for India, they were looked after. But other than that, the other 50 weeks of the year, there was no real corporatization in tennis at that point, not to a large scale. But then once I won that Olympic medal in '96 in Atlanta, then corporates came in. And interestingly enough, the first 5 of my 45 corporate endorsements that I had were all from Calcutta. Okay. And I'm so thankful to Goodrick Tea, ICI, to name a few, Tatas, to name a few, that really came out to really support me. And part of our conversation today was about how, as you brought up during lunch, how when a young athlete wins at the age of 19, 20, or when a young athlete as a professional wins at the age of 23, 24, only then there's a rebound action. Yeah. That then the corporates come in, and then the sponsorship comes in, and then, but what happens to the young athletes who are so talented in the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities that don't have that support? I really believe in India, we haven't even touched 50% of our talent in sport yet. Because I personally believe they're all in the rural areas. Okay. An example of that is exactly what MS Dhoni has done, what Mary Kom has done. An example of that is, even if you look at Saurav and myself, growing up in Kolkata, no one ever thought we'd have such a great captain in cricket from Kolkata. Yeah. It was generally Mumbai or generally Chennai or generally, you know, Delhi that actually threw the captains out. But I feel that we have a long way to go to recognize talent in our country, not just in tennis, but I'm talking about physical fitness talent, mental aptitude talent, emotional quotient talent, because that's how winning is done. Technique is a prerequisite that you learn. You put in 10,000 hours, you put in 3 million repetitions. Over 10 years, you will have good technique. If you hit 10,000 hours, 3 million repetitions over 10 years of anything, whether it's to eat with chopsticks, or whether it's to brush your teeth, or whether it's to hit a slice serve wide on a deuce court, or to hit a cover drive, you will master that art. But where the difference comes in between the amateurs and the pros is really in physical fitness, mental fitness, and emotional fitness. And these are 3 areas that I feel have to grow in the grassroots. I really feel that in the grassroots, whether it's, we were talking about it earlier, right? Whether it's, you know, the PT classes we did in school, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, I don't know how you're going to win Olympic champions doing that. I really feel that eye-hand coordination, working with your diet, working with your sleep, working with your daily regimen, the environment that you grow up in, growing up in sports clubs. Nowadays, again, you brought up a wonderful point that nowadays people are interested in building sports infrastructure because of the commerce and the money that's in that. You have some great stadiums in our country, but 90% of the time those stadiums are empty. To fill up an Eden Garden stadium 40 weeks a year or 50 weeks a year is damn tough. To get a ground like the CCNFC ground where you can churn out sports events is very tough. But I feel that's where the differential is. If you look at countries like China, in your housing community, you have playing fields.
Okay.
You look at countries like Singapore, you have tennis courts, swimming pool, hockey, astroturf hockey, not grass.
Okay.
Astroturf hockey in your community. And I feel that in India, we're really going to grow as a sporting nation in big numbers if we actually concentrate on the physical training or the sports education in schools and colleges.
Do you think the base is low in India in terms of as a sporting nation, in terms of the number of people playing active sport, be it the urban milieu, be it the rural landscape? Do you think the base is, or has it improved since the time you started playing and then you hung up your boots?
I think it's low,
okay,
even though it's improved.
Okay.
If you look at 1.4 billion people, we are number one in the world in obesity. We're number one in the world in diabetes. We're number one in the world in mental health issues. Sport creates endorphins, happy chemicals. When you go and play sport, when you go and run around and with your friends, and it doesn't matter if you're playing football, hockey, cricket, tennis, basketball, track, chess, whatever you're playing, it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
So that feel good is what really is important for a quality life. Also, when you play sport, you get to burn off the food that you eat. And we Indians eat such rich food. Our diet, so to say, is full of curries and sauces and pastas and rice and, lots of meat.
Yeah.
So hence, going out there and burning not just the calories to look good, but going out there and really burning off the food and the sauces that you're eating also keeps you in good health. So for me, sport is not just about winning Olympics, like we've got 2 Olympic medals in our family already. But it's not just about winning. It's not just about Grand Slams. It's not just about World Cups. It's not just about millions of dollars. It's about good quality health. And I think that is where we need to focus in India. Because if we look at our pollution levels in any of our major cities, it's a huge issue. If we look at mental health of the youth, the amount of pressure that all these young kids are taking in Loreto House or St. Xavier's or La Martiniere or all over the country, Delhi Public School. I mean, some of the stories that are out there about not just peer pressure, but about parental pressure, exam pressure, social media pressure. I feel really sorry for the youth because the amount of pressure that they are feeling about this instant gratification. My dad told me once when I was transitioning from football to tennis, I said, Dad, I'm not so sure I can do this, right? Do you think I can be an Olympic champion in tennis? And my dad said to me, you're going to probably lose 75% of the matches you play.
Okay.
But if you win Wimbledon once, you're a hero. He said you can lose 51 weeks of the year.
Yeah.
But that 1 week that you win an Olympic medal, your whole career is made. My dad always has immense intuition, even though he doesn't trust it as much. Because my dad's the workhorse. He's the hard worker. He's the doctor of medicine. He's the doctor of science, of sport.
I've seen him do incredible work at the National Cricket Academy in Bangalore.
Yeah.
It's like very quiet, silent, but does the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when Dad said you're going to lose 75% of your matches, for you young kids out there, I have lost 74.3% of every tennis match I've played in my career. But yet, the other times that I won, you win 18 Grand Slams and make 36 Grand Slam finals and play 7 Olympics. So it's not about how you lose or win. It's about how you rebound from a loss, how you have a hardship in your life and come back from that. How maybe you only have 10 followers on social media on one of your posts, but don't worry about the person who has 5 million, because you can grow up to that. You don't worry about the exam that you failed in. because you can come back from that. So for me, I think winning is done by mental and emotional strength, because technical and physical strength are prerequisites. Those things just come with repetition. But winning is done in between the two temples. And especially for the modern generation, I think the stress that they undergo is tremendous. All these smart gadgets, things happen so fast and so quick. I'm sitting here with you, I can feel my phone just buzzing nonstop. People just need your attention all the time. And what does it take to be successful, right? It takes a lot of lonely hours to master your craft. So whether it's academics, whether it's sport, whether it's music, whether it's dance, whether it's rocket science, whether it is computers, you need to spend time in isolation with your craft. So if someone spends 4 hours a day, then I've got to spend 6 hours a day. If someone spends 8 hours a day, and I want to be an Asian champion, if they're spending 6 hours, I may have to spend 8. If someone spent 8 hours a day, and I want to be a world champion, maybe I got to spend 10 hours a day. So your quantum of time that you spend with your craft and the passion that you have to it determines your success, in my humble opinion. I believe that, sure, you need a quotient of luck, you need a quotient of good fortune, you need a quotient of opportunity, which is big. But I've always been that you can be a master of your own destiny. And especially for me, growing up in this legacy of having a mother who's captain India in basketball, having a dad who's an Olympic champion, and then, wow, son, you're playing sport. To negate the pressure of all of that, I figured as a young kid, how can I learn from the Naresh Kumars, from the Vijay Amitrajes, from the Peles or the Muhammad Alis, or the greats of the world? How can I study them and learn how to rewrite my own history? How can I take the family legacy and make it better? For me, I will never be a doctor of medicine like my dad. I will never be a doctor of sports science. But being the guinea pig to my father, I know exactly what I had to do practically. So now what I've been doing in the last 20 years is compiling 60 years of knowledge of Baba's and putting his 60 years of knowledge and my 40 years of knowledge together and putting it in an online portal into an app that hopefully will be ready in the next, I would say, 24 months. And then taking that to schools and colleges and professional clubs and academies all around the country. And I will never proclaim to teach hockey or basketball or cricket or golf. I won't even get into the technical stuff of tennis. But what the Paes family stands for is physical fitness, mental fitness, and emotional fitness. And that's how winning is done, I guess.
How did you reinvent yourself? Because you fought against ageism. I mean, you were there for almost 3 decades playing at the highest level of sport. You were a damn good singles player, winning India matches in Davis Cup, doing very well in the Grand Slams in the initial rounds. And then you seamlessly move into doubles. You seamlessly move to mixed doubles, 18 Grand Slam titles in the realm of doubles. Then a symbiosis with Martina Navratilova, Martina Hingis. How did you constantly reinvent yourself? I mean,
you've done your homework. Some good questions. As a junior, I won Junior Wimbledon and Junior US Open. I was number 1 in the world in juniors. But from the juniors to the seniors is such a long way. And if you look at a lot of our youngsters, like we had a young 18-year-old on the stage today, and she's a world champion already at 18 from Kolkata. Fantastic. And as much as now she's in a great sport of cricket, where the women's IPL is happening, and there's equal prize money now in cricket in our country, which I'm so happy about. I think there should be equality in every walk of life, both for women and for men. Equal prize money, equal salaries, equal opportunity. And I'm so happy that that's come about. But then when you look at the transition from juniors to seniors, is where we lose a lot of our Indian athletes. Because the corporate dollar that does not come in for expenses.
I just want to interrupt you here because there was this fabulous player called Aisari Rai in Karnataka. Fabulous player winning titles at under 14, under 16, under 18. And then one day she disappears because she's using tennis to get admission at a US university. And we lost her forever, right? So is there an issue there? I mean, where someone takes up tennis as a recreational sport, and because they don't see enough opportunities at the highest level, they use it to get admission in a university abroad, and that's about it, you know?
That's exactly where I was going. That once you do well in the juniors, and you have that talent, and you show that talent that you can be a great world champion in the seniors as well, you don't have, we used to stay back in the 80s, you don't have the infrastructure. Yeah. You don't have floodlights, you don't have synthetic tennis courts, you don't have AstroTurf fields, you don't have bouncy wickets. Now let's go into the other aspects of sport. You don't have sports medicine at that level in the 90s. You didn't have great physiotherapists, you didn't have sports knowledge. That was in the 90s. Yeah. Today we've got all of that. But when we talk about tennis, we still do not have one indoor tennis court in the entire country. Not one. So in a tropical country like India, where it rains for about 3.5 months a year, that means for 3.5 months there's no tennis. Yeah. So we're still improving drastically. You've got AstroTurf fields, you've got great cricket academies all around the country. The BCCI is really an association that should be emulated by all sports. Yeah. I think that when most athletes complain about cricket, saying that cricket takes the prize money, cricket takes all the corporate sponsorship, cricket takes all the TV time, I think very differently. I think that we should all learn from cricket. I think that if we learn from how the athletes are looked after, even the retired athletes, come back into coaching, come back into administration, come back into umpiring, come back into the governance of the sport, I think every other sporting governance should do that. And it should have a healthy blend of corporate people, legal people, and athletes to run the association. I think that's how associations will thrive. But now coming back into, as an athlete, as a player, I feel that really to develop the grassroots sport, to give children the opportunity to play sport in school and learn skills that will then enhance them from their junior career to their senior career. You know, how to manage their money, how to manage their daily fitness regimen. I was walking in here and a gentleman was asking me about how much fitness do you do even now? I mean, and for me, fitness is a lifestyle. It's a daily thing. Yes, sure, there was a lot of training going into specific tennis training, but fitness is just for good health. It's for releasing those endorphins, for being happy. So whether I go and play golf 4 times a week, or whether I'm in the gym every morning for an hour and a half, or even at night when most people are out having dinner and going out for a party, don't be surprised if you see me in the gym working out. Because I think it's just part of who I am and what I grew up with my parents. I mean, I still remember in the monsoon months running with Baba in the streets of Calcutta. We should run up and down Park Street, around the VM, Victoria Memorial, and back, and it became a lifestyle, and I think that's why one was possibly one of the fittest athletes in India or in the world, and at the same time one was able to conduct a career over 31 years, over 3 decades. You know, so I think if you have certain amount of passion for your craft, if you have certain amount of, also you got to be a little eccentric, you got to be a little crazy to do it for this long, you know. But if you really get into it and you have a burning desire to achieve what you want, you can do it.
So, Leander, I think we've completely run out of time. Is there any time for questions? Yeah? Maybe 2 questions? Yeah. Can someone give her the mic, please?
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Megan Gunnian, and I'm from Loreto College. My question to you is, growing up, we often look up to people we identify with or we would like to be, you know, somebody who inspires us. So who was that person for you, sir?
Good afternoon. If I had to choose one person, it would be my dad, be my father.
Thank you, sir.
My father epitomized what an athlete could be. He not only was an Olympic champion and, you know, played sport at a very high level in hockey, but he was just a good role model. You know, he's my best friend, he's my dad, he's my North Star. He has made a difference to so many people's lives that I learned very young that the loyalty of friendship is one of the most important things in the world. Being a good human being is more important than being a Wimbledon champion. Because there are quite a few Wimbledon champions over the years, but we don't necessarily remember them. But we'll remember a Navratilova, we'll remember a Muhammad Ali, we'll remember Pele, we'll remember a Mother Teresa, we'll remember a Mandela. Because these people went out and did something for humanity that was extraordinary. So for me, there are 3 athlete doctors in the whole planet. There was Socrates, the Brazilian footballer, who was a World Cup champion and a doctor. There was Sir Rick Charlesworth, the Dutch short corner specialist, also a champion and a doctor. And then there was Dr. Paes, my Baba.
One more question, yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Anvesha. I'm from Loreto College. Sir, how was it like to actually lose 74.3% of your matches?
I choose to forget, so I have no idea.
No, but like, to be more specific, how did you deal with those losses? Like, did you have to face external criticism? And if so, like, how did you grow from it?
That's a great question. Sylvester Stallone came up with one of my favorite quotes. And it says, it's not about how hard you can hit, but it's how hard you can get hit, fall down, stand up, dust yourself off, and keep going. That's how winning is done.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Leander. I think that concludes a wonderful session.
Thank you so much.